It is indeed delightful to have the Cheatham family bring us music this morning. Thank you, Derek, Anna, and Beverly. I'm changing your name, right? Derek, every time you start to play Swing Low, it takes me back to my childhood when my grandmother and great-grandmother would sing that during prayer time. And you know, children are very literal. So as a child, I wonder why they were singing about going home when we were already home. But I kept looking for this chariot, and it never came. So, but thank you for those memories. Last Sunday, in his message, Rossi exhorted us to love one another. And as the scripture from 1 John 4:12 that you just heard read by Carol, no one has ever seen God, yet we love one another. God dwells in us, and God's love is brought to perfection in us. The way we know that we remain in God and God in us is that we have been given the Spirit. So I ask you, what is this love like? Well, the second scripture that Carol read, 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 to 7, tells us that love is patient. And how many of us couldn't learn to be more patient? Love is kind. Love is not jealous. It does not put on airs. And it is not snobbish. It's never rude or self-seeking. It is not prone to anger. That one we all have to work with, yes? Nor does it brood over injuries, holding on to past hurts. Love doesn't rejoice in what is wrong, but it rejoices in the truth. There is no limit to love's forbearance, to its trust, its hope, its power to endure. So, how do we take that kind of love and translate it into action, first for our congregation and then externally? Do we ask people to fit into what we profess our brand of Christianity to be? What does fitting in look like? When you think about fitting in, what image comes to your mind? Have you ever tried to pack a suitcase? You're going traveling on vacation or a meeting or something, and you want to take what you know you will need, the essentials, but you also want to take what you want to take, what you like. But as you look at the suitcase, reality hits, and you will have to squeeze, to fold, to repackage, to make things fit. Is this what we want people to do? Contort themselves, make drastic changes, or fake it to fit in with us? or what they think we want? If so, then what are the consequences? A vibrant, engaged congregation? I doubt it. I contend that instead of asking people to fit in, we instead create a culture of belonging, one of psychological safety. Now, just how do we accomplish this task that seems so Herculean? Well, let's first start with a common meaning of psychological safety. According to psychologist Amy Edmondson, this is a culture where members feel comfortable speaking up, sharing ideas without fear of negativity. So why is creating this kind of culture necessary for us? Well, it strengthens the bonds among members. It improves our organization's operations and effectiveness. It increases members' engagement and retention. And we certainly want to hold on to members that we've brought into the congregation. It aligns with the mission of our church. And it creates spaces for creativity. Well, you ask, how do we go about creating this kind of culture? Psychologist Timothy Clark outlines 4 stages. The first stage is inclusion. And at some point I may ask, it's not homework or anything, but for you to think about it, how would you rate our church on this particular item, inclusion? Would you give us a B, a C, a D, or an F? Think about that. Well, what would inclusion look like? That we welcome all members authentically. Authentically. We don't ask them to fit in. We don't ask any contortions or whatnot, but authentically. Consistent with our fundamental values, we value diverse backgrounds and perspectives that our members bring. We don't ask people to fit in. If we look at Dr. Clark's second stage, that is learner safety. Now, there are members among us who are newcomers and may not know much about the church. But all of us are learners if you believe in lifelong learning. So how then do we create learner safety in our congregation? Well, we provide that, one, by embracing a growth-minded culture. Not a stagnant one, but a growth-minded culture. By celebrating, by learning from our mistakes. You know, last Sunday I heard Darlene say that yes, sometimes we'll make mistakes. Yes, we will make mistakes, every one of us. We're humans and we're prone to do that. But we use those as learning opportunities. We also can provide safety by creating membership opportunities. One of the things that becomes apparent sometimes is if we welcome new members, but we just leave them to swim for themselves or find their ways, that does not give them a sense of belonging or engagement. And so we have to be intentional about creating opportunities for them. We also can provide this safety by providing constructive, supportive feedback. Now, at one point or another, everyone is a critic. But what is necessary is constructive, supportive feedback. You don't say, no, well, you could have done that better. That's not constructive. That is not supportive. But help us look at one another and say, how can we improve on what we've just done? By sharing knowledge freely. There are folks who want to hold on to what they have. Somehow it makes them feel good, it makes them feel superior because they are the holders of knowledge. But what does that do for you? Knowledge is to be shared freely. Let's then move on to Dr. Clark's third stage, contributor safety. Well, when folks come in and want to contribute, how do we make it safe for them to be able to offer contributions? What it means is giving them the space to work autonomously, not hovering over them. It means breaking the silos we have created and in which we feel so comfortable. Now, whether it's the church, whether it's our professions, whether it's professional organizations, social organizations, etc., we tend to create silos. We're comfortable in those silos. But if we want member engagement, we have to break down those silos. And lastly, by providing space for innovation, all of which would strengthen our congregation. The fourth and last of Timothy Clark's stages is challenger safety. Now, why would we want to provide safety for those who challenge our status quo? Will they not only disrupt what we have and bring chaos into our midst? Well, according to Dr. Clark, they have a useful role in the growth and effective operation of the organization, and so we need to provide safety for them. How do we do this? Well, we can start by welcoming their constructive feedback, by creating a process for them to challenge what is the status quo. Not see it as disruption, but see it instead as opportunities for growth and change. In our questioning and evaluation, separating their ideas from themselves as individuals. I remember when I was a practicing clinician, I was always trying to get my clients to focus on whether they were talking about their parents, their spouses, or whatnot, to focus on the ideas rather than the individuals. Or focus on the behaviors. What is being done? What is being said? Rather than, oh, she's a terrible person, and so I can't accept any ideas from her. You may see her as a terrible person, but does that mean she doesn't have good ideas? So making that separation is critical to providing safety for the challenger and demonstrating an openness to change by rewarding innovation and improvement ideas. Well, as we work to create this culture of psychological safety within our congregation and externally to other groups in which we hold membership, how can we attend to ourselves individually to ensure our well-being and happiness? As yes, we want to look at the collective, but what do we do for ourselves to ensure that we are okay? Bree Goff, author of Today Was Fun, tells us to look for reverse pet peeves. And he said, what's that? You know what a pet peeve is, right? All of us have them. And if you say you don't, I have to question that. A pet peeve is something small that disproportionately annoys us. But in contrast, what Dr. Gruff is saying, we want to look for a reverse pet peeve, something that is small, but that brings us disproportionate joy. So, can you find a reverse pet peeve in your life? I encourage that we all do that. Gruff also reminds us to find the sliver, because some things that result in bringing us great joy require too much of us, whether it's title, time, money, etc., and can result in frustration and exhaustion. Now, you're planning a family reunion. That will bring you great joy, right? Yes, some Snickers. Doesn't always bring great joy. But it should as you think about it. You're packing, that's time. You're spending money to fly or drive, that's money. You're planning, again, that's time. But you're anticipating great joy. Now, sometimes you get the great joy, but then sometimes there's Uncle Larry. And everybody knows what Uncle Larry's like. He creates some of those pet peeves we have, right? And so what we want to do is find a sliver. What is the tiny area of joy that we can enjoy or that brings us happiness in all of the chaos, all of the noise, all of what this disruption is within our society today? What is the sliver of joy that we can find that brings us some peace, some happiness? Mary Catherine McDonald, a trauma researcher and author of The Joy Resets, recommend that we schedule a few TLJs. Now, what is a TLJ? These are tiny little joys, bright bits of happiness, not anything expensive, but something tiny that brings you joy. If you like bird watching, finding that bird sitting there. If you are an outdoor person, looking at the flowers as they bloom, or reading a delightful book, which is my bit of bright joy reading. So what is it individually that is your tiny little joy? Find that. It's necessary when the broader picture, the macro, is so negative that this micro piece brings you some bit of joy. Lastly, Dr. Sue Varma, a clinical assistant professor of psychiatry at the New York University Grossman School of Medicine and the author of Practical Optimism, shares that she sometimes enjoys putting daily activity on 0.5 speed. Now, we usually don't do 0.5 speed because we're all rushing here, rushing there, rushing this place, etc. But she advises us that we do something on slow-mo on purpose. Take a minute, reflect. Whatever it is you're doing, instead of rushing, do that. If it's cooking, put that burner on simmer and sit there rather than on high boil. If it's painting, look at it carefully and do it slowly. Even if you're painting carrots that look like wine bottles that look like carrots with feet, which is what my wine bottles look like when I paint. But do it slowly and therefore take the time for reflection and meditation. And my dear church family, let us heed this word. These words, let us try to create a culture of psychological safety, but let us also remember to find the tiny slivers of joy in our lives. Thank you.